Hi, I'm Mark Fletcher. I'm the Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. Welcome to this next episode of Next Gen 911 FutureMakers. The Next Gen 911 FutureMaker podcast is designed to highlight those individuals in our industry that are not only creating the technology, but fostering the next generation of leaders. Joining me today via Zoom in the podcast studio is Michael Martin, CEO of RapidSOS. Welcome, Michael. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Great to be here, Fletch. Thanks for having me on.
Michael, your company has pretty much redefined the entire industry and taken on the challenge of delivering next-gen 911 services even before the network was built. Just how big of a challenge was that for you guys?
I mean, it was a massive challenge that I think we would never have been able to accomplish if we didn't have a lot of people to really help us along the way. I mean, Fletch, you and I first met, you might remember this, I was kind of this tech nerd in grad school that had some personal experiences around this. And I borrowed my dad's car and was driving across the country, meeting with any 911 director that would take a cold email, cold call, meet with me. And obviously headed towards Nina. And along the way, I was listening to your original podcast, actually. And so, that's just, I think, an example of how change has to happen, right? Like, change has to come with new innovative ideas, but it also has to come with all the experts coming together around a shared mission and vision. So, I found your booth that day at Nina, forced you to talk to me, and you that began kind of this process of you helping us think through solving this challenge. And so many people along the way would do the same thing, right? Ultimately, we would work with over 5,000 first responders as we developed the technology. Obviously, today we're in nearly 5,000 911 centers across the United States and Mexico. So it's been an incredible journey. It's definitely had plenty of challenges. Many folks might be familiar with our brief journey building a mobile app that wasn't very successful.
That's one of my favorite stories, Michael. Whenever I tell my story about how I first met you, I said this little 24-year-old kid, fresh out of Harvard, came running up to me, Mr. Fletcher, I fixed 911.
I think it took the audacity and not, someone who came not from a total outside perspective to have this view like, we should think about this differently. But then it took all the industry expertise, the people that had built the system today, the people that were out there managing 600,000 plus emergencies a day to come together to ultimately make all that happen, right? And I think that was totally instrumental. And reflecting on that 24-year-old kid that chased you down, he was totally naive, right? And had no clue what he was doing.
He did have a clue what he was doing, Michael. He had no idea what he was doing. He did fix the problem. And even though Haven was not the answer, Haven was a great research tool that proved out the technology. And what you did is you took my advice that day. I said, go in there and talk to everybody and listen to everybody. And that's exactly what you did. And that's how you walked out of there with a better understanding of what needed to be done. And Haven wasn't the answer, but Haven was an enabler.
Yeah. I still remember flipping through several years afterwards, kind of the notebook I had with me that day. And it was just generally from that summer. So I drove ultimately over 3,500 miles that summer and met with several hundred 911 agencies and just all the notes and insights. And I know, Fletch, Nick Horlick, my co-founder and our CTO. So he was back developing the core technology out of the Harvard Innovation Lab at the time. So every night we would talk and just try to, how could we convert all the knowledge that people were sharing with us? How could we incorporate that into this technology stack? And then you're exactly right. Haven, we learned a tremendous amount in Haven. We'll never forget having our intern in the back of a squad car in New York City. The NYPD was like, oh, so this thing supposedly solves some of the routing challenges, right? And we're like, yeah, we're trying to. He's like, great, we have a routing problem on the Hudson. So they drove him to the middle of the George Washington Bridge and had him do test calls, right on the boundary with New Jersey to see if we could route it correctly. So it's been a heck of a journey. And just, when you reflect on it, just, gosh, so grateful for all the people that came together to build this. I know you recently had Tracy on your show. You recently had Lisa Folks on your show. Just two examples of thousands of people that helped come together to build this along the way.
And I don't remember what conference it was at, but I do remember talking to you. You were just finally accepted that Haven wasn't going to be Haven and you were going to do something else. And you're like, how do I get this functionality in the hands of every device that I need to touch? And we were talking back and forth and we decided together, you've got to get the functionality inside another app that you're already using. I can't be loading up an app, but I need the functionality in an app that's already there. And then it was, 3-4 months later, you came out and you said, hey, we're going to have the emergency button in the Uber app. And that's when I said, perfect. That's exactly the place for it. And that was the next evolution that got you down the road a little bit further by getting it in the hands of users.
Yeah. And I think each of these things, right, you learn from. So working with, one of the world's fastest growing technology companies in Uber was also its own learning experience, right? And when we initially did the partnership with Uber, we were not everywhere on the public safety side. So we had to kind of go city by city at that point and do training, implementation, operationalizing that content and data. And again, it was, I didn't know what that was going to look like, Fletch, but it was, I can't think of a single 911 agency that was like, we don't want that content and data.
Right.
It was just again and again, this industry leaned in, for that content information and then worked with us on how to actually receive it, right? Because that also was a challenge in the very fragmented 911 system with a variety of different systems and software vendors and different roles and responsibilities. Where do you put the make, model, and color of the vehicle? Where is the exact location relevant, right? And so that all took time and again, I give a lot of credit to Uber, who had a lot of patience through that experience. I mean, Uber is not a company that's known for patience. They move very quickly.
Yep.
And a little bit, they had to learn kind of that public safety did stuff very thoughtfully and methodically. And that's how we were going to have to roll this technology out. And obviously, ultimately, was a great partnership for us and for the thousands of agencies that receive Uber data today.
The people that make up a company really kind of define how that company is perceived in their market and in their industry. And you did a great job to be welcomed as the new kid on the block in public safety, which is a very, very tough bro and sister club to break into. Where did you look for all your talent?
Yeah. Well, I think that we realized fairly early on that we needed to continue kind of that original genesis of RapidSOS, which was outside technologists partnering with deep expertise, operational folks, and technologists from inside the industry. And some of those would ultimately join in-house. Our public safety organization is over 30 people today. So they do all sorts of work out working with 911 agencies and first responder agencies every day. And their core, many ways they lead our product development roadmap, the feedback they provide, the expertise they provide. And then we brought in software engineers from many of the largest tech companies, so large Silicon Valley names as an example. But we also realized that we needed to bring in real expertise from the 911 software vendor community. And we did that more in a partnership model. So today, I think we have over 70 public safety vendors that are partners. And again, early in those days, right, that was critical. Is how do we get this content out there? So, people like Mark Grady at InDigital or John Bryan at Geocom that really stood up and partnered with us to build this. And I think it became this ecosystem of partners, in-house folks, and then obviously 911 telecommunicators across the United States.
So obviously a good part of your talent pool, or at least the customer-facing side of your talent pool, is coming from the 911 industry. Now there's 100,000 call takers that are out there working today. What are you doing to sow the field, so to speak, to find the right people that are going to be your future employee set once they've decided to wrap up their public safety career and move out to the vendor side? What are you doing to foster that?
Yeah, I think there's, a couple different things we do. The first thing that we've done is we participated in a matching grant along with the Western Fire Chiefs Association, the Orleans Parish Emergency Communication District, and a few others, including FirstNet and Responder Corps, on creating a network for public safety innovation. So this is called the R2 Network, and it's deliberately, the goal is to bring together entrepreneurs, like-minded public safety officials in an ecosystem of innovation. And obviously, selfishly, from a RapidSOS standpoint, really excited, to bring together that sort of community of people is really extraordinary. The other thing that we're doing, obviously, is we're out trying to be an engaged participant in this community. So I think prior to COVID, we were attending over 70 conferences or events a year. We obviously have a very active public safety advisory board, as you've supported us on, Fletch, and you know well. So we really try to be as connected as we can with folks in the community.
Now, I know you've recently expanded into Mexico, and you're looking at other areas around the globe. Are you looking to bring in talent from those areas as well for those specific markets?
Yeah, we've in Mexico, we have a much smaller team than we do in the United States. So we have about 5 folks that are working on Mexico at the moment. But again, leveraging partners and their expertise. We brought in folks that had deep expertise on the public safety network in various states of Mexico, and that allowed us to very quickly scale. So this year in 2020, we went from basically doing nothing in Mexico to today we're embedded in 911 agencies. I think they cover approximately 60% of the population of Mexico. So we'll support in the range of 50 million 911 calls in Mexico, I believe, this year. So that's been, again, it's a small team, but we were fortunate to kind of bring them together. And one of the good things is, this mission, it really attracts talent. So many folks may be familiar with Jessica Reed, who built out our international organization. So she's based out of London now and helping us expand into Europe. But she also expanded our presence in Latin America and just did a fantastic job, attending the conferences and events, meeting folks, and ultimately building that small but very, very aggressive, very committed team.
I think the problem over in Europe, Michael, is that, the countries over there are like states over here. Here you got to deal with New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Over there, you're dealing with entirely different countries. And those boundary lines are very, very deep in the ground. And rules are very, very different on either side of the boundary. How are you guys doing with your EU expansion?
Yeah, it's early for sure. We are, last week, we announced that we were starting our work in the United Kingdom. So we're partnering with the Medical Alert Foundation there to provide health data into the 999 system. And then we're in the process of piloting a number of other things, but it's still quite early. I think you're right, Fletch. We're still learning how to be a good partner in Europe. Fortunately, the European Emergency Number Association has been a really great resource for us. And, I think there's a tremendous opportunity there, right? Obviously the population of the EU is larger than the United States. And while the countries are sometimes kind of similar to size to some of our large states, they often have a more centralized approach to public safety. So they may have, a more limited number of PSAPs, which hopefully will allow us to actually deploy technology faster in Europe, although that's all kind of to be determined still, for sure.
Well, that's the thing. The model is a little bit different in there, but you've come from a government-run agency, typically in a lot of the countries. So you've got this centralized architecture that was then distributed out with nodes or endpoints, but really the core was a core infrastructure. So it's a lot easier for a new technology to be rolled out because you're rolling it out in the core. And the smaller the countries, that could be a weekend cutover in a lot of places. So now, again, some of these, you could fit 12 of those countries inside of places like Texas, but population is same. But again, you've got the cross-border challenges, and I think that's really where your technology brings a lot of value to the EU. It's to solve that cross-border problem where the line is in the middle of the bridge, and you've got to figure out what side it's on because the rules are very different.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that's something that we've come to appreciate is that the standard operating procedures, the technology systems, and then even the back-end infrastructure behind the first responders, right? So the healthcare systems is an example. So like, the National Health Service in the UK, like they're going to run a 24/7 nurse triage functionality. So some portion of emergency calls could go into that nurse triage functionality versus in other countries, they may take a more US-based approach. So you're exactly right, Fletch. So in many ways, like those jurisdictional boundaries, I mean, it's very different from crossing states because there is, different cultures, different operating procedures, different infrastructure. So yeah, these are all things that we're learning and hope we can be a good partner for the public safety community in Europe moving forward.
Yeah, no, a few years ago I had the opportunity to visit the Milan 112 Center, and I also visited the EMS dispatch, which was located at the hospital. And once the call was determined to be medical in nature and it went to the hospital, it went to a call taker, went to a dispatcher, but then a medical staff team was actually dispatched. Typically a paramedic and a doctor would go out to the scene, and they would put a 12 lead on the patient, and in the 911 center, they're watching cardiac traces of all the patients coming in. They've got bed counts in front of them. They're looking at where resources and capacities are located, and they're telling them where to take the person. Might be a little bit further, but you're going to get quicker service because of something else going on. And what a great holistic way to be looking at public safety. But you can only do that with big data. And I think that, again, the value of NextGen is all this connected building data. And I know that's something that you guys are getting into. We're getting into over at my company. And that's really getting exciting as far as what we can do with a NextGen feed from the origination networks into the NextGen 911 networks and the PSAPs even before that network is built by going over the top.
Yeah, and it's I want to touch on two things actually that you mentioned there. First is on the health side, and second on the connected building and connected campus side. So on the health side, in the U.S., we are not as integrated from a healthcare system. So there's interesting dynamics that occur as a result of that. But we do have, roughly 145 million ER visits a year in the United States. Obviously, many of those are coming in from ambulances. And the latest research estimates that about 18 million of those trips probably could be better treated in some sort of lower acuity care center. So whether that's urgent care, telemedicine, there's now various services where the doctors actually go into your home. And I think as we stare down this global pandemic, we're reminded that, the hospital is not always the best place to treat someone, particularly not, in this day and age. So I think there's real opportunity to do that. We are working with a number of healthcare providers, medical device companies to do all sorts of stuff around that, including, you mentioned the EKG side. We have signed our first sets of connected AED companies that do give us some EKG information. We've signed a couple of other EKG businesses. So, I think we're not too far away from having that sort of data in the hands of 911 and first responders. And then on the building front, I'm super excited about this. One of the things, my first experiences with the 911 industry was actually the safety briefing that we all received when we were at Harvard Business School. And so Harvard Business School is a campus that is in the city of Boston. So Harvard University is across the Charles River. It's in Cambridge, but the business school is in Boston. And so when you receive your briefing, the entire university has one address. And so their instructions were, to call 911, give them the campus address, 1 Soldiers Field Way, hang up with 911, call the university police, tell them where you actually were located, say, Aldrich Hall, and then they were going to meet, the ambulance at the gates and escort them to wherever you actually were on campus. So this notion that we can bring together in harmony, all that precise location information that we know about where someone is, along with detailed maps of the university or campus environment, along with sensors from the built environment, right? Like potentially multimedia feeds from the hallways, smoke density, temperature readings, et cetera. It can be a total game changer around campus and connected building safety. I think we're just seeing just two examples of how data is going to totally transform how we think about responding to these emergencies.
And that's going to change the talent that's required from a telecommunicator perspective in the future and from a technology provider such as yourself. You're going to have to start touching all of these different technologies with people that are well vested in those technologies so you don't build something that's ridiculous.
So I think on the 911 telecommunicator front, I think generally, as a society and a country, we have long taken for granted the work that our 911 community does, right? And we've seen this in all these bills where we were totally misclassifying even kind of the role, responsibilities, et cetera, for these folks. But I also think that we're already starting to see how that skill set is continuing to evolve. Right. And you're seeing some agencies now like Jim Lake in Charleston, South Carolina, or Bob Finney in Collier County, Florida, where they're actually starting to think about the evolution of their 911 telecommunicators into more of a data analyst sort of position. And in some cases, actually, they're even hiring for a data analyst role to augment the work that the 911 telecommunicators are doing to manage all the inbound incidents. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time over the next 10 years as this becomes a data-first environment. Now, I think the good news is that we live in a world where, most of us at this point are pretty tech savvy. Even after COVID hit, even my parent, I'm in a rural town in Indiana. My mom's a small town doctor and my dad is a small town marriage counselor. And they both went to telemedicine, which blew me away. I'm so proud of them for doing that. And so I think we're just seeing kind of this evolution of technology. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
And then, from a RapidSOS standpoint, one of the things I think we've appreciated all along is there are 20 billion connected devices out there. There are over 6,000 911 centers in the United States alone. We estimate they're running over 25,000 different software systems. It is not possible to take on this challenge unless you partner, right? And so obviously, we have our own application layer called RapidSOS Portal, but it's not right for every 911 agency, right? Some 911 agencies want that data in their CAD, some want it in their call handling, they want location on the mapping layer, some want it actually into some sort of additional data application or window. So it really is kind of thinking about the right data, the right place at the right time, and partnering with this ecosystem, and very similarly on the ingestion side. So, working with all the different connected device companies to link that content and data in. So today, we connect about 350 million devices. So various data streams coming through there. Obviously, location data from smartphones, but also increasingly health profile information, connected building information, like the work that we do with you guys at 911 Inform, a variety of wearable sensor data, connected vehicle information with large partners like SiriusXM's connected vehicle division. So this data kind of all fuses together into that standardized operating procedure wherever the 911 agency it's most applicable for them, whether that's in, again, CAD, call handling, or RapidSOS Portal, or somewhere else.
What's your advice for the baby dispatcher, as Tracy calls them today, that want to make a career out of this and look for something beyond their public safety career to get involved with the technology side? What's your advice to map out that roadmap?
For what it's worth, 3 pieces of thoughts on it. The first one is just, I think, broadly on the engagement front. So there's a number of areas where this community is talking about technology. Obviously, at the conferences, at various NINA and APCO working groups, right? There's a number of places where you can engage with the technology. Most vendors are going to have focus groups and user groups and things like that. So I think that would be number one. Number two, as I mentioned in the beginning, RapidSOS would not exist without the expertise and insight of public safety. So we want to hear from you. My email address is mmartin@rapidsos.com, MMARTIN@rapidsos.com. Please, if you want to get involved, please send us an email. We are always looking for new ideas, new insight, more feedback on how we can continue to improve. So please get involved directly with us. And then the third piece, though, and probably the most important, is just not to lose sight of the important work that they are doing every single day, right? I think that it is a super intense job, as you know, Fletch. And, I think that even being on the outside, right, I have never had to directly be responsible for someone's life. I've had the good fortune to sit along on a number of 911 calls, but I was never directly in charge. But on those days where I have the privilege to do that, it is draining, Fletch. And so, I think as a 911 telecommunicator, mental health is so critically important, and knowing the difference that you are making every single day in the lives of thousands of Americans, it is just so critically important. So I think that perspective is also quite important. And folks like Tracy Eldridge on our team and a number of other folks have really started to help us think about the mental health side of 911. But yeah, I think just to recap, definitely get involved in the community. Please reach out to RapidSOS. We feed off that new insight, and never lose the perspective of the critical work that you're doing every single day.
We were at a conference together someplace in upstate New York, and you were there with Nick, and you said, hey, come on and sit in on this session. I think they're going to be talking about Carey's Law. I said, oh, yeah, sure, let's go watch. And we're watching Tracy Eldridge present, and you're like, what do you think of her? And I said, wow. I said, that's one tough cookie. She knows what she's talking about. He goes, yeah, I'm thinking about offering her a job. And I told you, if you don't hire her, you are going to be kicking yourself in the butt for many, many years to come. And, again, getting involved, right? That's how she got out in front of people and made a name for herself. And look how she enabled this industry, and look what she's done for you. What a great asset, that she's been. Yeah,
I totally agree. She was our very first public safety hire, has been totally instrumental in building this. And I think the other thing that she did is she engaged in the industry, and she engaged with us early on. So as we were out testing Haven, and as most folks know, Tracy Eldridge is from a small town in Massachusetts. And since we were in grad school in Massachusetts at the time, we were out a lot, and very thankful to the state 911 board that would let us, talk to their agencies, test and iterate. So the first time I met Tracy in person was 7 a.m., which was pretty brutal for a tech nerd grad student that was used to, working from 10 a.m. to midnight. But she had this stack of printouts from test calls she had made of Haven, of all the alley records. And she'd annotated all of her feedback and, all the things we were doing wrong. And it was just amazing. Just that level of engagement and feedback and insight. She's continued to do that, obviously, throughout the RapidSOS journey.
How bloody were you after that meeting?
When Tracy joined, she told me, that we are not going to push this app to the public safety community, so we'd have to find another way. And she helped get that done. So, yeah.
Just an incredible amount of spunk. Michael, I've known you ever since that day down in Nashville. And all I can say is I am incredibly honored to know you, and I'm incredibly proud of what you've done, what you've built, where you've come, and how you've gotten there. I don't think you could have done it any better. And not just you, but Nick and everybody else at the company who's just been there with you along the way and has evolved this company into what it is today. It's something you should be very, very proud of. You have got your own earmark in the history of 911, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Well, RapidSOS perhaps does as a result of all the people that came together behind it, and as you're being generous, Fletch, but as you know well, I have no real skills. just like bringing people together, and this was the perfect moment to bring together this community with a set of technologists to really drive change.
Mr. Fletcher, I fixed 911.
So, yeah, I'm I just, in conclusion here, Fletch, just want to really say thank you to this whole community. I mean, all the 911 software vendors that were there when we were just at 20-year-old kids asking for their time and attention, and they gave us a chance, and all the 911 telecommunicators, people like Christy Williams, that when I cold called her, she had breakfast with me in Texas. I will never forget that. Right? I mean, this was just so many people that came together to help us build this along the way. So it's been a heck of a journey. We got a lot more work to do. We're just getting started, and I'm super excited to keep bringing all this critical data into the various 911 systems and work more and more with public safety and the amazing work that they do every day.
Great. Well, fantastic. Thanks so much for sitting down with me again today, Michael. I always enjoy talking to you and having these discussions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Fletch. Great being here.
Well, that puts a wrap on yet another episode of Next Gen 911 FutureMakers. I'm Mark Fletcher. I'm the Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Fletch911. Be sure to check out the rest of my blogs and podcasts at www.fletch.tv. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Stay safe and take care.